pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Basil, would you call the roll, please? I'd be happy to. Mr. Basil here. Ms. Bites?
Here.
Mr. Doty?
Here.
Mr. Kurtz?
Here.
Mr. Rathgeb?
Here.
Mr. Speed?
Here.
Ms. Strowski?
Here.
Mr. Wolf?
Here.
And Mr. Martino?
Here. Under announcements, there will be an executive session following the committee of the whole meeting to discuss some labor and personnel issues. And I'd like to welcome, we have 4 members of the public and 2 members of the press, and that's like double what we've been getting. So thank you for coming out on this miserable night. Are there any agenda edits? Public comment for those of you that haven't been here in a while, if you would come to the podium, sign your name, make sure the microphone's turned on, you push the button and you wait for the red light to come on. And Mr. Wolf has a machine up here that times 3 minutes. So if anyone has public comment now on any agenda item, seeing none. Ms. Torsia?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Martino. I only have a few comments. We did start our school day today late, delayed, but all buses did get in and out without incident, which was wonderful. So if I start to look like I have bags under my eyes, it's because I've been up since 4:30. We will be recognizing some students at the end of the month. We have a few students from Birdsboro Elementary Center who are in the Gifted program that will be presenting their gifted projects to the board. Top 3 winners, more or less, from the project that they did, and I thought that it was worthy of them bringing it to our attention and showing the wonderful things that they're doing. And we also will be recognizing students from the high school for their accomplishments in the Berks County Mathematics Competition. Our sports teams are still competing, boys and girls basketball, wrestling, and the co-ed bowling. The match was postponed, so if anyone's looking to watch Muhlenberg versus Danny Boone, it should be at Jay Lane's tomorrow. That's all I have tonight, Mr. Martino. Thank you.
One other thing I'd like to mention under announcements. In December, Mrs. Torsia and I and Mr. Small and Mr. Doty and his wife, and Mr. Kurtz, I believe that was all, attended the choral concert, and it was fantastic. The kids really deserved. Mrs. Bites, I'm sorry, who's glaring at me like I forgot her. But it was terrific. Well, I remembered your wife. That's, you know. It was terrific. The kids were really, really good. What do we have under committee meeting dates?
Oh, we have the Facilities Committee will be meeting the first Monday of the month at 6 o'clock p.m. Policy Committee will be meeting the second Monday of the month, held before the Committee of the Whole meeting, 6 o'clock p.m. Curriculum and Instruction Committee will be meeting the second Monday of the month, held before the voting meeting. Mr. Basil's going to discuss. At 6 o'clock, and Mr. Basil's going to discuss finance. And I think I said second Monday twice, and I think that could be a misprint. So is the committee meeting, are they both meeting the same night, policy and curriculum?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's my fault.
Okay. Policy is meeting on the 22nd, which is Thursday. And
Then we're going to move to the
C&I.
committee of the whole.
okay.
C will be 4
All right.
before the voting.
We will be able to get these dates out correctly at our voting meeting.
I was just going to add, Mr. Small and I were talking about the Finance Committee meeting, and we were thinking the 29th of January, which is a Thursday night. So if you guys are available for that. Does that work for you tomorrow?
That one, normally it would, but I have another commitment.
Okay, so we'll talk and see if we can come up with something else.
Okay.
Are you going to come up with a certain day a week?
Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll talk after the meeting and come up with a date.
But the next policy committee meeting is scheduled for Thursday, January 22nd at 6:30 p.m. here, just to make that correction.
6:30 or 6 o'clock?
I believe 6:30 was the time that we were using. I think that was the best time for Mr. Wolf.
PRC is 6:30, facilities is 6 o'clock.
I got 6:30.
Right, that's right. Yep. Okay.
And then we're going to be we're going to try and get into a regular routine of being pre-committee of the whole from here on in.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead. Well, January is PSBA Board Recognition Month, and in the past we have had different students come out and do performances. My administration and I are evaluating that, and we will have something special for the board to recognize all of your time.
Just for information, sitting as a member of the public, attending 2 or 3 board recognition months, I thought it was a little pretentious that the boards would recognize themselves, and then I find out that it's not. It's done by it's mandated more or less by the Pennsylvania School Board Association. But now, having been on the board for a year, and not speaking for myself, but for the other 8 members, the time that people put in for no compensation whatsoever, I think they deserve a little bit of recognition. So, thank you.
We will take care of you.
Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to curriculum and instruction.
Thank you, Mr. Martino. I am not feeling too great. I have a sore throat. I'm going to be very brief. If any other committee members or Mrs. Torsia would like to weigh in, please do. We heard a presentation by Scott Matz about technology in the classroom, and that was very exciting to see what Daniel Boone will be doing in future years and the great path that he has the technology department going down. So we're excited to see those things come to fruition. We also had a report by the administration about PA Common Core. Specifically, we heard a brief history of Common Core in Pennsylvania, impact on teaching and learning, and strategies for communicating with the public. We did have some members of the public at the meeting, and they were very engaged throughout the meeting. So I would encourage anybody out there who would like to have a dialogue about these issues in our district to please come to the next Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting. If anybody else would like to add anything, please feel free.
Mr. Kurtz, what were some of the highlights that Mr. Matz had discussed with you?
Mr. Matz told us about the smart boards, and we discussed how teachers are utilizing them and some of the exciting things they can do. I thought it was really interesting how teachers are able to put worksheets up onto the whiteboard, and they're able to do the problems with the students, and then they can save a copy of that worksheet onto their computer, and they can either put it on their website or they can share it with parents. That was very interesting. When I was in school, and I'm sure when many others were in school, they had overhead projectors in the classroom. Big, bulky machines where you had to get a transparency, and it would project the image up onto a screen. Well, now Mr. Matz is adding to all of our classrooms document cameras, which pretty much just stream an image of a document. You put a document underneath, and it projects the image through the computer and the projector onto the whiteboard. And these devices only cost something like $85, which is, I was surprised at how inexpensive that was, or those items were. So those were a few of the highlights. Perhaps other committee members can speak to some of the other things.
I thought it was interesting to note that our student-to-device ratio is right at 1 to 2 at this point in time.
That's pretty impressive.
I'm getting there.
Mm-hmm. We also discussed the way that we've used the Ready to Learn grant and the monies that came to us through that grant, and that we were working in conjunction with the technology department to try to update technology that we have, bring in the Chrome tablets into classrooms to start, because they are a little bit less expensive, as well as the what's the proper name of the cameras?
Document readers.
The document readers. So we've been using monies through the grants that we hadn't in the past applied to technology to try to help increase that area.
Excuse me, I misspoke on that ratio. It's 1 to 2 student to device,
yeah.
not 2 to 1.
Yeah. Right, I understood that.
2 to 1, we'd probably be getting rid of some equipment. One other comment. After the December Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting, Connor and I attended the Amity Board of Supervisors meeting, and unsolicited at the end of the meeting, the board singled out the Board of Supervisors singled out the school board and the school administration for praise for not raising taxes while at the same time expanding curriculum, which we were glad to hear that they noticed. Any public comment on curriculum and instruction? Seeing none, we'll move on to building and grounds.
Building and grounds did not meet, since our last meeting. We will be meeting, our facilities will be meeting before the voting meeting at 6 o'clock.
Okay, two things, or one thing actually. Last week, Mr. Small, Mr. Kurtz, and I attended the Amity Board of Supervisors meeting, and there's apparently an agreement in place from 2001 that obligates the school district to change the driveway leading in here into a two-way street, which the Board of Supervisors has agreed at this point in time to hold in abeyance and not enforce for many reasons, including the fact that exiting onto Old Airport Road, the visibility is terrible. So, but somehow or other, someday, the district may be responsible for changing the access road in and out of here.
From Old Airport?
Yes.
As a follow-up, Chaz Lyon did get in touch with me today and forwarded documents that he had from that meeting, which was prior to this board sitting, as well as myself. So I will make sure that I put that someplace where it's meant to be available.
Is there enough room there to do that? I mean, what's the easement across that ground?
Yeah, do we own enough?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's part of the issue.
Yeah.
Somewhere, and they said we probably have it in our archives. There's an architect drawing of what was proposed. I don't know that we found that yet, but Chaz in the email to you said he would send that over separately.
Right.
So we'll have to look. I have no idea. They were also talking about the road out of here from the intermediate center onto 662, which again is not a great exit. It would probably be better off if all traffic had to turn right, but it doesn't. So right now, again, it's there, but they're not enforcing it.
But they're retaining the right.
Yes.
Yes.
How did those discussions come up? Was there? I mean, I'm just trying to think about this because in 2001 we weren't really doing anything with this building. So
Were you building the other building, maybe?
probably,
Maybe it was
2000.
sometime in agreement with that.
yeah.
I don't know. We were sitting there and we're looking at the agenda, and the agenda just had Amity Elementary School on the agenda. And we had no idea what they were going to do or question or bring up. In fact, we weren't invited to the meeting. We just went because. And out of nowhere, this is what came up. And I believe the agreement supposedly, the discussion took place in 2000 and was agreed upon in 2001. And again, nobody here was on the board, and I don't know if any administrators were here
I think that was
either.
Robbins back then.
I believe so. It was before me.
No, yeah, that was
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
Robbins.
It must have been Amity Intermediate, because when was that built?
I believe it was built in 2000 and I want to say 5. I came here in 2008, and I believe that it was there a few years before I had
I'm
come
just
to the
wondering
district.
if, as part of the subdivision land development approval of that building, whether some sort of deal was struck, and you would think that those notes would be on the recorded plan somewhere.
Or the minutes from the 2000 discussion that you referenced. Would minutes be available from the township that we can refer to, the discussion?
Well, they sent in the email they sent today, they sent some written document, and apparently there's also an architectural drawing, but I don't have it.
I think it would be useful to get a hold of the minutes. from the Amity Township meeting, from that discussion, that
Are you
meeting.
offering to do that?
Sure.
Okay.
Could you give me, did it come up as far as, you said there was discussion in 2000 and decided in '01?
I believe Lauren has the dates.
Looks like it was recorded
Dates.
June 13, 2001. That's probably,
In the one document that they gave us a copy of, a small print document, and I believe spoke to the fact that in the event that Daniel Boone were to renovate this building, then this should happen.
Which we did.
Yeah, that did happen. We renovated, but the roadway didn't happen. And what prompted them to bring it up and put it on the agenda last week, they didn't indicate, but
I can tell you when we talked about renovating it, that never came up at all.
Nobody probably would have known, nobody there would have known probably.
No, well, even part
Yeah,
of it.
actually, half the board was on the board.
Oh, you're right, that board would have known. I forget.
More than half of the board was,
Wasn't it '09 APC's renovation?
yeah.
That's true.
And
That
quite
board
frankly,
was
I
on
think
the
eight
books
of
since '01.
the 9 board members were on the board when that deal was
Really?
struck. So I'm surprised that didn't come up.
They were questioning, too, the use of this building. I don't think they were fully aware that it's partially an administrative building and River Rock, and they were questioning whether we had less than an enrollment of 200, and I said there's less than an enrollment of 40, so we're safe there. I think they were concerned about traffic in and out of here, but since there's so few people here, I think that's another reason they held it in abeyance.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to just sort of get the details around that so we have a better understanding of what our obligations are.
Why not hurt? I mean, I'm assuming we have our minutes archived from 2000.
I'm sure they're very detailed.
I'd hope, yeah. But, see, I would think they would have had to authorize the agreement at some point, hopefully, maybe.
I'm forwarding you everything that I do have, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any public comment on buildings and grounds? Seeing none, we'll move on to finance. Did you want to discuss course approvals or?
Does anyone have questions? They're standard. These are the same courses that are put on here for approval each month. Yes.
I have a question. Where is the pool of courses that staff can select?
There is not a pool. They are able to get themselves into any program, master's program, or continuing education courses. There's not ever been anything that's been prescribed or put into a pot and saying that you can take these. It's supposed to be related to your field in some way, working with children, etc.
And the teachers and, I guess, and guidance counselors seek out their own?
Everyone, all of the professional staff, whether you're guidance or nursing, teachers, even in our classified contract, the paraprofessionals, there's tuition reimbursement
Okay,
for
one of
classes.
the sources is BCIU, but
BCIU is one source. There are many colleges that place themselves on out there online for online courses that people do utilize.
okay, thank you.
Maybe I'm missing it, but I don't think the course approvals were on.
I didn't see it.
Thank you.
No, it's just a placeholder, meaning that,
Okay,
that you're going to
so there
look
are
at the
no-
attachment of
there are
the
no
court.
new-
Right,
okay.
right.
Very-
Yeah, that's typically at the end of the month.
I thought so.
Are there any questions about the per capita tax exonerations?
Yes, just a general statement. Those are mostly, for the public, they're mostly because they're student full-time and they get exonerated from that obligation. Is that why we see most of those?
Yes. So that $15 per capita tax if you're a full-time student, it gets waived.
Okay, so they simply apply for it and we sort of, as a formality, approve them.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Small, do you want to discuss items 8C?
GASB 45, excuse me.
You had it there.
GASB 45 was implemented, well, I'm going to say probably 10 years ago, that forced us to provide evaluation of our post-retirement benefits. And so there's a group that is this Pennsylvania Trust, and working together and with Conrad Siegel, get a reduced rate. But we're required to have this available for our audit by June 30th of 15. So that's the purpose of this agreement. I believe the last one we did was in 2012. I'm correct on that. But that's what it's for. It's mandated under GASB.
I just had a question for Mr. Small. So do we know what they did in terms of bidding? I mean, I saw the contract, I read through it, but I have no idea how to benchmark the prices that were provided in there to anything else to know that
I can't answer that.
Because so they go out and they get these prices on the behalf of our school district, but we don't know whether how great those prices are.
No, I really can't answer that.
Any other questions on that?
I have a question. Is it like a no-bid contract then? They're just the only people that can provide that service?
Conrad is the primary provider of actuarial services in the state. They have been utilized by, even if you're not in a trust, you typically would use Conrad.
So it's monopoly.
Approaches that.
Thank you.
Mr. Small, you want to go right into a budget update?
Okay. I placed before you two documents. One is the updated 5-year projection, the one with the colors and the real fine print. We're working on developing a new format so that that's a little easier to read. Moving forward from the preliminary budget presentation in November, the big change here is the results of your qualified bond results, both for the December issue and the January issue last week. And your total, I had sent out an email on Friday with the results of both issues, and we had initially thought we could get a little over $500,000 on each issue. Second issue came in over $700,000, so your total savings, debt savings, is approaching a little over $1.3 million over 3 years. So the green numbers are the reduced amount. The amount under debt service is the current amount of debt service. So that shows you the impact that those savings will have on those 3 years. Now, we also noted that if markets remain favorable this year, keep in mind we can pull $10 million per issue under Bank Qualify per year. So we did 2014, we just did 2015. So in December, this coming December, we will begin looking at where the market is, and possibly we could pull another $10 million in January of 2016, which could impact the 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18 years. So we'll be monitoring that to see what we can do there. The other piece that has been adjusted would be the revenue in the 14-15 year. Under other revenue, if you recall, we had built our budget on the assumption that we would pull $330,000 from the swap fund. But I also, in the email on Friday, shared with you that the value of the swap really took a nosedive in the last 2 months. And last Friday, we hit the threshold and below, and so we did terminate the swap. So that $330,000 I hadn't officially taken from the swap fund. We needed it to terminate the swap, so I've removed that from other revenue. But at the same time, we gained the $390,000 in the debt service this year in savings, so we're fine from that standpoint. So the swap is terminated. You've got $390,000 of debt service in the current 14-15 year, and you will have a $784,700 savings in the 15-16 budget. The other document that I put before you tonight is just the current draft as of today of your preliminary budget moving forward. Just to keep you updated. And moving forward yet further on the agenda, the Act 1 resolution is required to be adopted will be on your agenda on the 26th. That simply states that in lieu of adopting a preliminary budget now and using the new budget cycle, you'll adopt this Act 1 resolution that says you won't raise taxes above the index for the 15-16 year. The index this year is 2.5%, which is roughly $760,000, I think, would be additional taxes. But right now, we're not projecting a tax increase for the 15-16 year, so we need to adopt the Act 1 index that says we don't intend to. Any questions?
Does that allow exceptions, or exceptions wouldn't be allowed if we pass that?
If you adopt this index, you're saying you're not going to go above the index. In order to file for referendum or exceptions, you have to go to the index and then file for exceptions or referendum with PDE. But in our current situation or status, we aren't raising taxes and don't intend to file for exception or referendum.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Before I turn this off.
I would like to state that Mr. Kurtz and I were sort of on standby because the finalization of the swap termination was a conference call in which Mr. Small and officers of the board had to be on the call, and we were on standby from actually the week before, where we thought we were going to terminate it. And it sounds easy, we terminated the swap, but I know the hoops that Wells Fargo had Mr. Small jump through. They kept changing the fees they wanted, and not only the amounts of fees, but they kept coming up with new regulations. So Mr. Small did yeoman's work in getting this done. So congratulations, Mr. Small. We thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any public comment on anything financial? Seeing none, we'll move on to personnel.
Are we skipping discussion of school property?
Oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry. Mr. Kurtz had a presentation, but he would rather do it in person. And he was planning to be here tonight, but he wound up going back to D.C. yesterday. So we're going to hold that in abeyance until he comes back, unless anybody else would like to bring up property taxes. Is that correct, Mr. Kurtz?
That is correct. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to do it at the end of the month instead of at this meeting.
All right. You sound ill, Mr. Kurtz. Moving on to personnel. Mrs. Dorsha, did you want to touch on these?
Really, they're just routine extensions. We do have an extension for maternity leave for, I guess I didn't. Sorry, thank you. There are extensions for maternity leave, even letter D, the Scott Mulan, whose family grew by 3. And same way with letter E, classified, just an extension of some leaves that are already there. And looking at an appointment to get permission from the board or to have the board approve the use of Mr. Henkel for day-to-day coverage at the high school until we fill that principal position. And then the rest are just routine types of things.
Emulating a football coach, I want to announce that Mr. Henkel is in a walking boot.
Yeah.
And he tore something in his foot chasing his granddaughter.
Playing.
So that's why he's not here in attendance this evening.
And we're not in a position to have any of our vice principals ready to step up or as temporary?
Well, it would take away. I can talk about that, but
it's
no.
Okay, you're saying no.
Yeah. At this time, no.
I just want to make sure it was considered. Thank you.
Yes. We are in the interview process, and the interviews did begin today and will run tomorrow as well. There are seven candidates that are being interviewed. There were over, I believe, 11 applicants, and through the evaluation process of the application, we narrowed it down to 7.
Would you be expecting Mr. Henkel to stay on through a transition period to help assimilate the new principal regardless, or would you think a principal that could just come up and be up and running?
I think that a principal would come in and be up and running. This is primarily to make sure that the building is continuing to run as smoothly for the rest of the year. Right.
So we have contiguous coverage, not necessarily overlapping.
Correct.
Is that the goal? Yes,
and if we do hire someone from outside, there could be up to 60 days before they could be released from their position till they could begin here. So it's a gap of time.
Okay. Thank you for addressing all the options.
Sure.
And when they do come, they'd have the vice principals to work with them
Right.
also. Any public comment on personnel issues? Seeing none, we'll move on to programs.
You'll see attached our monthly enrollment, student data report. We are looking for approval for high school cheerleaders overnight trip. They have been doing an outstanding job in their competitions, and as a result will be going to Walt Disney World in Orlando to compete at the national cheerleading competition. Those are some programs there. And that's
We actually need to vote on the cheerleaders tonight because the trip is before the next meeting.
That is correct.
Before we get to the cheerleaders vote, I just had a question on the student data report. So my question was, under the one list it says River Rock, we have 17 students enrolled, and on the other list it says 46. So I just want to make sure I understood.
46 total students at River Rock, of which 17 are Daniel Boone Area School District students.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And we've reached our max with the contract at 46. Is that correct?
I don't think our contract has it.
No, I think that we continue. That I believe that they have a cap on the number of students that they would like to see in their program, and I can't repeat that total. But I do know that if 9 more were to come on, that was the understanding moving forward.
Yeah, it's in groups.
Right.
We get additional discounts or fees.
And I really thought it did cap out.
No, I don't think it caps
No,
out.
but I think they're going to cap out before it would cap out. That they wouldn't have 150 students in their program. That would not be an effective program, not the way that they would want to run it. So I believe that the cap is the number of students that they want to have in their program in this building.
We talked about what some of their larger facilities were and the number of students in them and what their expectation was for here. And they had said if we got to 4650 or something like that, that would be a good number. But I think I wrote down in my notes somewhere around 60 is being
I think so. I believe I have that in my notes as well.
They wouldn't want it any larger than that number. So I think there's still some room to grow here for us.
Thank you. I have a question about the student data report or the enrollment report comparison. Prior to this month, we had been showing the exact successive months, like 3 months back, December, November, and October of the present school year. And I noticed it's been substituted with the annual comparison. And I guess I was just wondering what the genesis of that was, because I kind of like to follow the pattern.
I cannot answer that question right now. I will have to look. I was not aware that we changed it. So,
okay.
Sandy, can you?
May I suggest, too, that what would even be more useful is year-to-date compared to this place last year, and maybe start of the school year if we don't want to do the 3-month trend. I'd at least like to see what the enrollment was September 2013 compared to now.
So year-to-date, 12 months.
Excuse me, 2014. If I would have liked to see, right.
Yeah, school year-to-date.
School year-to-date.
12-month.
and then 12
Like a
months
month-to comparison, and then,
1 year ago,
yeah.
this point in time last year.
It shows December 13th, December 14th.
Yeah, I think
and
what
the
she's looking
previous
for, the only,
month.
I think the only other column she's looking for is
September.
September.
I like that. I like if we're going to change it. I'm just saying maybe it would be more useful rather than showing us, the last 3 consecutive months, just 2 like that, a year ago, and where we were at the start of this school year.
Okay.
If it doesn't matter to
You want
anybody else.
September to repeat every
September
month?
2014.
Just
that would
lock
be
in September 14th.
That would be locked. If it's not too much trouble, if it doesn't matter to anybody else. but-
No, that's no problem.
That's a one-time number. I mean, once you put it down there, it'd be the same every month. So.
Okay. And I don't really need to see October's data as much as I'd be interested in seeing.
Where we were at from the very beginning, from our first day enrollment. No
All
problem.
right, thank you.
Sure.
So is there a motion to approve the cheerleader trip?
So moved.
Second.
I have one more question about that. So, the cheerleader trip from February 4th, they're going to miss 4 days of school? Or is the
Yes.
school closed? Or that's a Wednesday through a Sunday?
They will miss
How
4
does that work?
Well, it would be an educational trip leave request from the parent. They will be responsible for their work. They would be expected to take work with them and to get work ahead of time. It would be much like any other student that was leaving, for any kind of a trip during school time.
Because I noticed the first trip, the one to Hershey, that's only 1 day of school. And then February, that's 3 days of school. So that's going to be like a total of 4 days of school for the same group of students,
There's
right?
less travel time to Hershey than to Florida.
Right, but they're still
Yeah.
missing a day, is what
Right.
I'm saying. So over the course of the year, is there some sort of limit on how much time we let them get themselves behind the 8 ball, so to speak? Or should there be?
Traditionally, there hasn't been. I mean, a week is what we allow for parents to request students to be out for educational leaves. This would be something I would need to evaluate and make sure that we aren't, missing an
At
excess
least
of days.
tracking that group of students. Like, what if the parents then also pull them out for a week?
Right.
Or take snow days, or
Well, snow days all get made up. I mean, they all get made up, but these days wouldn't be. Like if they have off, then they have to make those days up somewhere else. But these days don't get made up necessarily when they miss. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Consider that.
If we don't approve it, it would save you some money, so that's, fine with me.
It doesn't really save any money. Oh, save you personally, because you. I'm just trying to understand how this works and if we're considering the kids, best interest at heart. Thank you.
So there's a motion by Mr. Basil, second by Mr.
I just want to make sure, the motion was for both the C and D.
CND. Okay. Is that fine for the second?
Yes.
Motion for 10 CND made by Mr. Basil, second by Mr. Wolf. Any comments or questions? Mr. Basil?
This will be a unanimous vote for approval unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passed.
You're out somebody.
Sorry, was you trying to get me through your life preserver there or something?
Any public comment on programs? Saying none. PSBA policy development update by Mrs. Torsham.
Yes, thank you. In December, we did receive confirmation from PSBA that they have received our application for the policy review, and they let us know what their current schedule is and that they are not anticipating initiation of the project to begin until March. At that time, a policy consultant will contact me to schedule a date for the policy research. In the meantime, I need to complete a questionnaire that they provided to me, as this will assist them in ensuring the appropriate and accurate information is placed in our policy. During the on-site visit, they will review the past 3 years of our board minutes, take notes on any information found pertinent to policy. They will Also need to keep a copy of the following documents to use. They will review our current policy manual, student handbooks, one from each level, faculty handbooks, current collective bargaining agreements, and the administrative compensation plan. So I am waiting for them to get in touch with me to set up that visit. But in the meantime, Mr. Wolf would like to continue to review or evaluate some of the policies and have them look at those individually so that we can make sure that we're not missing pieces and to move forward. Any questions?
It's my understanding that we'll still be able to utilize our
Yes.
certain allotted number per month.
Yes, that's my understanding as well.
When do they anticipate completion?
They didn't share that with me. I have only the fact that they're going to start in March. There's nothing here saying how long the process lasts.
They probably would not commit because it's so dependent on us forwarding the documents.
Most of these documents you probably have online,
We do.
so they could just access these documents from Harrisburg and get started. I guess the question I had was, does he think it's going to take 3 months, 7 months, a year?
I think in March when they start, I think they're going to do their own assessment, and I think then they'd be better able to say how long they thought it was going to take.
I can find out. I can give a call and get a general idea of how long this does take and how long has it taken them in other school districts that they may have done this.
I have a policy question. The booster policy that we played with for a year and a half, we did have 3 readings of that, right? That is enough.
We revised it at our last meeting.
We did, but it was on for reading, and then, right, it was asked to be reviewed by Mr. Basil, and so that is part of what we're going to review and make sure that we're moving forward and finishing up, that we have looked into the concern that was
That's what we
brought.
want to accomplish next week.
Yes.
So we can keep on track with
I think the issue was mutual indemnification or something.
I believe so, and I don't think that he saw a problem with that at all. He tweaked something there.
because I think we were going back between charitable entity and nonprofit. Mrs. Bites had pointed that out. The terminology was being back and forth, so we wanted to come up with a consistent terminology for referring to groups.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any public comment on policy development? Seeing none, we'll move on. There's no transportation report.
Just had a question on that, actually. You were going to review the transportation routes and stuff like that. How's the review of the transportation routes going along?
Prior to the holidays, when the new bridge construction was completed, we contacted the transportation office and asked them for a copy of their revised routes once the bridge was done, and at that point, Ron was not available. Told us we'd have it by the 1st of January. I believe we're supposed to have it this week, where Mike is. They told us they would have the current routes, rosters, and everything as a result of the changes after the new bridge. So we'll be, in the next month, we'll have a report for you to improve those routes.
Yeah, because that bridge closing was supposedly the reason some of the routes were taking so long.
Correct.
So this should shorten several of the runs.
Hopefully they're using it, we wouldn't know.
Well, we'll know when we look at
They're still doing
routes. No. When we see these new routes and roster runs, we'll know.
Any public comment on transportation? Seeing none, we'll move on to old business, a discussion of the Meet and Discuss Committee. Way back, about a year ago, I merged the negotiation committee and the Meet and Discuss Committee along the same lines that Mr. Wolf had told me about, that the Meet and Discuss was supposed to meet regularly, the negotiation committee only as needed, but it was the same people on both committees. But we never changed the policy, as we didn't do with several other things. Mrs. Torsha is meeting with
the DBA president and another officer monthly to review any kind of topics that come up, things that need to be addressed as we go along from month to month.
So she's already doing that, so I think, Mr. Rathke, your committee is technically the negotiation/meet and discuss committee, so if you want to discuss that with Mrs. Torsha and the DBA about being included in those meetings.
I can do that, Mr. Martino. I'm sure that we might be able to have some representation there, but I imagine that's probably middle or towards the end of the school day.
Yes.
So probably for most of my members, it'd be very difficult to get to that meeting on a consistent basis, but we can probably have some representation there.
Yeah, because if I'm not mistaken, what you said happened before, Mr. Wolf, was that the Meet and Discuss Committee really wasn't meeting regularly.
Well, how it was explained to me was that the meet and discuss was something that on a reoccurring basis of some period of time that they would meet with the teachers, that they would meet with the support staff and discuss any issues that would come up that need to be brought to the board's attention. During my tenure on that committee, we never met for that purpose. I think those, as Mrs. Torsha was saying, those meetings are actually, you're taking that on. I don't know if you're meeting with the support staff. I know we were only talking about the teachers at that time.
I do meet with the support staff as things arise. I don't have a set meeting date as I do with the DBA, but it's certainly something that I could establish. It wouldn't be a problem.
I just think it could be productive to meet just to discuss, what's happening with the teachers and the support staff, aside from negotiation.
Concur. Yeah, absolutely. We can make that happen.
Any other comments on the meet and discuss?
I think my question was, will we be removing the meet and discuss from the policy, in addition to the revenue enhancement that we already have direction to do so?
005 has meet and discuss listed as a committee.
Do we want to leave those as ad hoc committees or change them to ad hoc committees to be added at a later date at the board's discretion as opposed to having to rewrite the policy every single time for future boards?
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think because you're not going to meet every month. So if we have those as ad hoc committees, I think that would be fine.
Okay, so I understand we're going to be removing the meet and discuss and the revenue enhancement from the board policy 005.
No, leave meet and discuss as ad hoc.
Well, that's not
Right.
an ad hoc is not, all the ad hoc are not listed on this policy.
Oh, they're not part of the policy?
No,
Okay, then.
only the regular ones.
Yeah, then just remove them.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is approving the minutes of November 10th Committee of the Whole and the November 10th Special Voting Meeting. And Mrs. Torsha and I both received a letter from the public questioning why the November minutes have never been approved and posted, and I still am not sure what did happen with those minutes.
If I remember correctly, I think when we went to approve them, Mrs. White's had some concerns.
And I was not present at the meeting.
That's the October minutes that she had concerns.
Okay, all right.
The November
Not sure.
minutes were never returned to me.
And why don't we approve them at the next board
Yeah.
meeting?
All right. I just assumed that they were, when I saw that, I just thought it was the ones that...
I think
There was some that, needed.
Sandy doesn't have the minutes that for November at all, that after she sent them to you. So she needs them back.
She doesn't have them at all for me.
No.
Well, you said you sent them to Mrs. Bites, and she was supposed to send them to me.
I think we did have a conversation.
About collaborating on them.
Yeah. So I'll talk to Mrs. Bites and we'll talk about what's
So
that?
was the November minutes?
Yeah, I think that's
Wasn't
what
the
it is.
October?
Yeah.
Nope, October, you had me rewrite in third person, they've been rewritten and
Okay.
approved.
Yeah,
So
I
the
remember
November
October
was
approving
sent
those, so I
to
think, you're right, you're absolutely right. I did send those along to you, and, because you had some questions.
Yep.
And so we'll discuss it after the
Okay,
meeting,
that
and
sounds great. We'll get them.
then we'll send them out to the board for their
I was
consideration.
under the impression that since I didn't make the meeting, that they would have been approved without my edit, so
I think we-
sorry that
No
I
worries.
neglected to weigh in on those.
We'll get
Yeah, I
it
think
done.
it's just that they never came back or something.
Is that going to be the standard procedure? I'm to send them to all board members for edits?
No, I think you can send them to us, but I think what happened at the time, I think what we've been doing is appropriate. You're going to send them to the board president and the secretary to review, and we'll put them out there for the board, and then the board can edit them as they see fit. I think that was the discussion that Mrs. Bites and I had, and I had forwarded them to her with like an example of what she could do to make an edit in terms of a Word document, the track changes and things like that, so it was easier for the board to see what those changes might be. And then from there, we just never got back to the rest of the board, so that's our fault.
Then how do I know
Unless you
what?
object, if she doesn't get them back from you or me,
Assume that they're approved.
just assume that they're approved.
How do I know what board member has them to send them back?
No,
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't
You send them
matter.
to Mr. Basil and to me, or the board president, board secretary, whoever it is at that point in time. If you don't have them back by the time you should have them to post, just assume they're approved.
And we can always edit them at the board meeting.
Yeah.
If a board member has an
Right.
objection or a question or wants to add to something or strike something, then we can have that discussion at a board meeting.
We'll send it back.
Yeah, I'll make sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just so we have them before the next meeting so we could vote on them.
Say, in the future too, I'm just wondering if when we get the minutes, I mean, I know the secretary and the president looked at them, but if another board member has something that they'd like to see edited, I guess what would be the best way to come to the meeting where we're approving them with what we'd like to see, or to send back something? I don't want to violate the Sunshine Act, so can they send it back with saying, I'd like to see these potential edits at the meeting, we can discuss them, but so that we can see it ahead of time, so that we don't get in a situation where we have to table them.
Yeah, but that could really get cumbersome, because if you send them back to the president and secretary and one of us didn't agree with it, I think you're better off just coming to the meeting.
Well, I didn't mean I meant the whole board, right, because it really would be...
Then you could have 9 people weighing in on something.
But that's what's going to happen if you bring it to the meeting.
But
I'm not saying, but I'm not saying discuss it. I'm saying, if I think that I said X, Y, and Z, and that's what I want the minutes to reflect, but that's somehow they come to me. If I send them out to all 9 people and I say, please don't discuss, but this is what I'm going to ask at the meeting, how is that any different than you sending me the draft minutes for me to look at to see if that's what I'm willing to approve? Because that way we can see what the other person wants, and we can make a decision at that night during discussion. Otherwise, we have to table it, because I don't necessarily know what she wants changed or he wants changed. And when you're sitting here and you're verbally saying, well, I'd like it to read blah, 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 that's hard for us to say, yeah, that's okay, or no, that's not. Whereas if you see it in print before the meeting, you don't have to discuss it. You can discuss it at the meeting. But I'm trying to avoid not getting them approved the night they should be approved.
I think that's exactly what Mrs. Bites said. The issue she had brought up to me, she said, how do you think is the best way to handle this? And my suggestion to her was exactly as you pose it, is here are the minutes, take a look at them. This is how you edit them in Word, where tracks changes, and in a different color, and it underlines them and all that kind of stuff. And then you can send them to the board and say, by the way, these are some changes I'd like to see. I would like the board to consider at the meeting. Just as you're proposing.
Right. Because I don't want a discussion via email, but like I said, it's really hard to sit here and verbally, because I don't print, honestly, I don't print the minutes. I read them. So when she's saying, well, or whoever, and I don't want you to say, but if somebody's saying, well, I have a problem with blah, 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 I don't have that in front of me to even see what she's referring to. So,
Right.
or he. Right.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I think I did with one set of the minutes, is I sent you guys a version, a paragraph or whatever that as I had wanted it to be represented in the minutes, and you guys then approved it at the board meeting. So that discussion doesn't have to take place, but certainly I think getting the edits out to the board ahead of time is appropriate.
Okay.
I don't see an objection.
No, like I said, I would just add that do not respond.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that we don't violate sunshine laws.
Okay.
So are we going to move to document collaboration on them, therefore, with all the board members?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's necessary, other than in the years that I've been here, I've only seen a handful of times where somebody was very passionate about what was in the minutes, or not in the minutes and should have been in the minutes, type of thing. It's only been a handful of times. I think for the most part, particularly now that we're recording these minutes, it's pretty easy to understand what was said during a meeting, and if there's some clarification or somebody says, well, all right, that was said, but I don't see it represented here, I really want that in the minutes. I don't think that happens that often. So I think there's an opportunity for every board member to review the minutes, a couple days ahead of time and say, well, wait a minute, I see something here that I want to make sure is in there that's not in there, or it's not clear and it needs to be clarified because it was edited some way. And this is how I want to see that represented. I don't think that's going to happen that often. So I don't think you're going to have 9 people collaborating on what the minutes are going to say until the actual board meeting itself, quite frankly. You follow me?
Okay.
Nice, doesn't that kind of take care of...
No.
Is there any public comment on old business?
I can't wait to read those minutes.
Moving on to new business. We received a $250 donation from the Eastern Berks Business Alliance for the purchase of emergency clothing for the elementary buildings.
What that is the Eastern Berks Business Alliance had reached out to me, and in the past we had done raised funds to make sure that students had coats. We were seeing that was starting to more or less fall off. Children were coming to school with the coats, the heavier coats that they needed. However, at the elementary level, we do have situations where there's emergencies, accidents where children need to have a change of clothing, and we don't always have those things readily available. And they were very interested in making a donation to the school, and so that's what we're going to be utilizing the money. Children that might not have hats or gloves, routinely, we can make sure that they have those types of things. Typically, when a child has an accident or has an incident at school and goes home with something, a lot of times it doesn't come back, and we want to make sure that we're giving them newer undergarments, things like that. So that was one of the biggest needs that we felt we don't have a budget or line item for that would be beneficial in our elementary schools.
And it's very much appreciated.
Yes.
And who are the Eastern Berks? Who are they? Eastern Berks Business Alliance. I'm sorry that I'm not.
I'm sorry, I don't know them personally either. This was the first that I've been in this role where I had reached out, or where they had reached out to me.
Like a chamber of commerce, some sort of
Local business people.
Local, for example, a friend of mine who does life insurance for local bank. There's Battle Floors from the Hafners are in there. There's an automotive shop. So it's a group of
like a tree
of business people that are in the Amity area. They get together to exchange business, but they also but part of what they do is they also give back something to the community.
So it's a business alliance.
Yep. It'd be neat to know who was in it, so that we knew how we could, maybe throw them some business.
They have a website. They have a website with all their
okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
We also
had express my gratitude.
We also had the Music Boosters donate a new vibraphone valued at $3,425, and that is also very much appreciated.
And there was a picture of that sent out to you earlier in the year. We just wanted to make sure that we formally accepted the vibraphone as well.
It's quite a gift.
Yes. Item C is something that I concocted. I don't, personally, as a citizen, I don't like what I see happening around the country right now. And as Charles Barkley, an ex-basketball player, said, if somebody breaks into your house, who are you going to call? A protester? And I think this country was built on the rule of law, and our local law enforcement is the reason we can sleep safely at night. So I asked Mr. Kurtz to draft a resolution in support of local law enforcement. And unless anyone objects or would like to change the wording, I'd like to see us present that at a future meeting to the Amity Police, the Birdsboro Police, and a representative from the state police to patrol the area. I think our law enforcement people do a very dangerous, thankless job, and we only really notice them when we need them.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent idea.
Yeah. Thank you for your leadership on that.
If I may, Mr. Martino, I'm certainly not opposed to that, but I'd also like to see us, get a little deeper. I don't know, do we do anything for Law Enforcement Week with the kids? Do the new officers come in? Because it's good to get them exposure. The officers.
We do have an opportunity a couple times throughout the year, one time definitely towards the springtime, where we do have the different fire trucks, police, those things do show up at the schools so that they, the children get to be exposed to them. Do we do anything else outside of that? I know at Birdsboro Elementary, the DARE program was much more prevalent. I believe it was Officer Fay would come in, and I know that he periodically still comes into that building. But
maybe the elementary kids
we can certainly do something. Absolutely.
They have lunch.
And on a different level, not getting away from the kudos aspect. I'd like to see us maybe it's more the state police out there, but tackling our drug issues at the high school. Because, we have whether we want to admit it or not. So hopefully we can get more cooperation on that level from them as well.
I think if we invited them in to give talks or whatever, I'm sure they would do it. That's to their advantage too, to a little preventive discussion as opposed to after the fact. And as far as admitting that we have a drug issue, I think probably every school in the state has some degree of an issue.
All of the police officers, state police, Amity, Birdsboro, they are very responsive to any of our needs, even coming in, having a chat with a student. They're always there for us. So I do agree that we could do something else to recognize them.
So if there's no objection, we'll have this resolution printed on nicer paper and maybe put in a little folder to be presented.
Yep, thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a discussion of draft minutes. Mrs. Bites.
Thank you, Mr. Martino. I'm routinely plagued, and I say that in a good way, by friends, family, and associates, acquaintances in the district about what's going on at the board meetings, what's coming up, what are we going to be talking about in committee, what has been talked about so that they know if they missed an issue or not, and it affects their decision whether or not to attend board meetings. And my feeling is that in a gesture of transparency, we should be posting our minutes, or some sort of version of our minutes, as soon as they are reasonably available. Now, I know that by the sunshine laws, we're not required to post our draft minutes, which is what I'm suggesting, that as soon as draft minutes are available, I would like our public to have the ability to start looking at them. But I did some research and found out that under the right to know law, draft minutes are exempt from disclosure, but only until the next regularly scheduled meeting. At that time, regardless of whether the draft has been approved or not, draft minutes are part of the public record. So I would like the board to consider that we post our draft minutes And if you look at Hempfield School District and Octorara, they're just two that I found on a quick Google search. They put them out there, and it says draft across every page, so there's no confusion that the fact that they're draft. The detail in them can never be used against us. And then apparently what they do is, as the minutes are finalized, for example, then they just remove the word draft. Because when I went out to a hot link that I had from last month's research, I noticed that the link now went to their approved minutes. So again, just in the interest of full transparency, trying to engage our public, which is what I sort of ran on, that I wanted the community involved in our decision making. I would like to see minutes posted, and as soon as they're available, draft minutes included. And I'd like to see us be a little more vigilant about posting agendas for all our committees, for all our committee meetings, and certainly for our workshops and school board meetings, and with the word draft if there's still work in progress.
Well, before we get to agendas, let's stick to the minutes for...
Okay.
The minutes right now, by policy, are sent to the board president and the board secretary for review. So they don't always get back to Mrs. Kramer for a couple of days.
Well, as soon as there's a draft version available, I'm suggesting that it gets posted with the word draft emblazoned across it.
So you're suggesting it's posted before the president and secretary review and approve them?
Yes. Now, we could do some research and see what the other schools are doing, but it does give the public some sort of sense of what transpired. And
when do we post the tape recordings?
Within 24 hours of the meeting.
So the tape recordings are up there. I mean, there
yeah.
is information out
It's
there.
cumbersome.
Really, I know, but if people really wanted to know what was going on,
well, by law, we have to make them available anyway in 2 weeks.
Well, actually,
at the next
my question was it by the next voting meeting, or does the committee of the whole? So technically, because we don't vote to approve minutes until the voting meeting. I'm kind of wondering if that's just semantics.
It was a little gray, but I took it to mean that our group, the next time our group met, so that a committee of the whole meeting, and again,
yeah, I read what you put out. Of course, I think that was for a recreation board. So probably they only had one meeting a month.
No. What I said was just.
You had said, but you had said something from a solicitor that they had asked about a review on doing this. I think it was for some borough entity that had requested the clarification. So I don't think they had a committee of the whole. They just had a regular.
Oh yeah, I can't speak to that.
Yes, I'm curious.
My sense was that if we're having another meeting in 2 weeks, that the intent of the RTK is so that a board can't snowball a community and push issues through, in secrecy. So that it was fully expected that if you're having a discussion at the committee of the whole, you can't bury minutes so that people can't then come out to the voting meeting and they find out after the voting meeting what passed, what was discussed at the committee of the whole.
Do you think if we were approving minutes at every board meeting, so for example, you have a voting meeting and typically we're not approving that for another month, but if we were to approve those at the committee of the whole meeting, the next time the board meets, that way every 2 weeks we're approving the last board's meeting, would that help?
Yeah. Seems like an aggressive cycle, but I think that would help.
Is that doable logistically?
Depends on how fast you guys get them back to me.
Well, that just puts a burden on us, that's all. To get the job done faster, that's all.
Because I don't really know that I don't know that I want the draft minutes out there. I shouldn't say, not that I care, but if we haven't even read them yet to know what the draft minutes are, do you really, are they really on the website?
Well, that brings me to my next point. I'm not getting to read them in time for the meetings anyway. So seeing an effort be made to publish them in draft form, at least I could start reading over my minutes, compare them with my notes, and start, my own review process, because I'm not getting minutes until 4 o'clock on the Friday, and I have to approve them on Monday. I'm not in a position to approve them. I haven't even had a chance. I don't work weekends. I have other obligations on weekends. I personally am not getting time to review the minutes. So I see that as a fix for everything, for board members to have early access to them in a draft form, while they're still being officially schmoozed, if that's like a real word.
Well, that kind of makes it sound bad.
We'll see that in a minute.
So with Mr. Basil's suggestion of approving every 2 weeks, that doesn't address your concern of getting them
Earlier.
because we're going to have to approve them every 2 weeks.
Right. Well, I
so that's probably even going to be tighter sometimes. So you might not get them.
No, I think it stands to reason then that they're going to move them through quicker and they're going to make them available quicker to us.
Let me ask you a different question.
That's a different discussion.
In your email, you mentioned the onerous burden, if I recall correctly, of the public having to listen to the recording.
Yeah.
Well, for Mr. Basil or I or any of the board members to really review the minutes for approval, the only way to do that for real is to listen to the recording. So if we would have to do it, why is that an onerous burden for the public? And I'll tell you honestly, I'll make a confession. Yes, I really mean that, and I'll make a confession.
Why would everybody's suffering help you in any way suffer less? I'll
make a confession. I don't suffer. I don't listen to the recording. I don't approve the minutes. I just tell Mrs. Kramer if that's what she heard, that's fine. Because everything I say into this microphone automatically goes into the tape recorder. So I mean...
So why can't the public have access to that
because I think the
in
board...
a concise way instead of sitting down for 2.5 hours?
But actually they do in the agenda.
But I think the board should have access to them first. And again, that's not me. I don't care.
Well, that's a decision for us to make today. I am proposing, and I'd like some sort of vote on it, that we adopt a draft minutes policy. And I'd like the board to consider it, and we could codify it with the policy, a change in policy. We can have a vote on it at the next meeting, and we'll see how the public weighs in on it.
So what you're thinking is, because right now the process is on a Wednesday, right? The minutes typically come out for the board president and secretary to look at the Wednesday before the Monday meeting. So typically we get the minutes. I usually, if I'm lucky, I get them on a Wednesday night, but usually it's a Thursday. I try to look at them and get them back to the office for Sandy so that she can then publish them out to the board on Friday, which is when the rest of the board gets them. And then, we have the meeting on Monday, and everybody's got whatever material they have in front of them for the Monday meeting. Are you suggesting then that perhaps, I'm just throwing this out there, that post the Monday meeting, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that whatever minutes are out there that have not been approved by the board would be published as a draft until the following meeting when the board might then approve those meetings?
That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay.
Via the website?
Yes.
Oh, so really, what you're saying, rather than adopt them at that Monday meeting, we could publish them as a draft at that meeting, and then vote on them the next week?
As soon as they're...
I'm suggesting as soon as there is the written version available, as you say, one person sitting and doing all the laborious work going through the audio tapes. As soon as she's made her best assessment.
Or he, because I listen to it.
Whenever that first version gets
Don't worry.
put to paper, post it as a draft.
The person that puts the first version.
It's not going to change dramatically, but it gives the public a chance to see what's going on.
So that I'm understanding, so that Sandy has the right direction, what you're saying is when Sandy is completed with the minutes as a draft and sends them out to all of you to review, she's also to send it to Scott Matz to have posted with draft on it.
Yes, that's what I'm proposing the board to consider. And I don't see that it wouldn't be much more of a burden on it.
We just need to know.
Well, but I think we also need to determine if that meets what you're saying our requirement is.
But you're also asking to get the draft minutes prior to the Friday before. As we're getting our packages now
get it
Friday.
Wednesday.
Don't complicate it with my own personal problem, because my own personal problem I submit would go away if we did this. If you bear in mind what the law says, what the RTK, Right to Know law says, that we're only exempt from disclosure until the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think we need to have our attorney tell us what that means, if it's the committee of the whole or the voting. Because if not, then we need to change our actual schedule of when we're putting minutes out. Because right now we're not getting them till the voting meeting anyway, right? So if we need to be putting them out every 2 weeks, then they need to know that so they can move up their schedule of putting them out.
They wouldn't have to, though, if they just published a draft. They don't have to be finalized.
She doesn't necessarily have the draft until the Wednesday before. So
it's still within 2 weeks, though, right?
No, because she's doing the committee of the whole and the voting meeting for the voting.
Well, then, yes, we need to
right. So
find out what
I think that's the first step.
Well, I think Ms. Podolsky makes a good point. I think we should ask Mr. Subers.
And I'm not sure how you make something available that's not there.
Right. I agree.
Yeah, right.
Don't think we can.
Right. Well, it does. It says if the record's not available, you don't have to provide it.
Right.
But are we legally obligated to provide a record? That's, I think, what we need to ask Mr. Subers. There is a recording that if somebody really wants to know what's going on, they can listen to it.
So that I'm following, I'm to talk to Mr. Subers to see if draft minutes can be posted before voted on by the board at the next voting meeting.
Well,
is that what I'm inquiring?
What is our obligation for posting, for making draft minutes?
Can they be public before they are voted on? That's my second
question. Not can they. What is our obligation?
What is our obligation for a time frame for having minutes available to the public? As what is regular meeting mean?
Before we move on to that next item, for all the members of the public, if you haven't signed in, there's a sign-in sheet on the table in the back of the room. If you would, please sign before you leave so we have a record of who was here. As far as a discussion of the agenda posting now, Mrs. Bites, there were two separate issues.
It's two separate issues, yeah. There's no...
Well, no, but the agenda you were talking about, an agenda posted for all the committee meetings.
Just a suggestion. I don't think there's any legal...
No, we're not talking legal, but I don't think that's a bad idea. That way even the committee members would know what's being discussed.
And again, I think that I've seen draft written across other school districts as the agenda is being, sort of compiled.
But what was your question about the committee of the whole or the voting meeting agenda?
Excuse me?
Didn't you have a question about posting of the committee of the whole or the voting meeting agendas? Weren't you hoping to get them posted sooner?
Yeah, as soon as they're in formation. As soon as there's a document, that you two have.
Yeah, we'll see. It's been being posted by Friday. I've been coming up here as a rule on Wednesdays. There's an exception this week because I had to come here for a meeting Thursday. I came Thursday instead, but even coming Wednesday, we usually then finalize that agenda, send it to Mr. Basil for verification as the board secretary. So if he gets that back to us Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, Friday's the soonest it's going to get posted.
Why can't we have it at the point that Mr. Basil's looking at it also? Why can't we start looking at it, preparing ourselves for the meetings, and the public start to be aware of what the discussion points will be?
Because the agenda is supposed to be developed by the administration with the board secretary and president.
A draft agenda, not final agenda. I don't see what the aversion is to having the public know that these are things in process, works in progress. I don't see what the harm is. I don't see. It seems like we're trying to be covert about something.
I don't know why you're using the word covert. We're posting it by Friday, so there's no intention to be covert.
Why can't they be exposed to the work in progress so that
the soonest they would get it would be Thursday night instead of Friday night? I mean, I don't believe that's covert.
You're meeting on Wednesdays, and why couldn't it be posted as soon as you're done your meeting on Wednesdays?
Because then it's sent to Mr. Basil, who's not at the meeting.
And why can't it be posted while Mr. Bates is
Because the
listening?
policy says he needs to approve it in accord with the president and the
You
administration.
don't have to approve draft agenda. He has to approve the final agenda. I'm asking you to post a draft agenda. And other school districts do it. And if nobody wants it, I don't want to belabor it any further. It just seems fair and appropriate to let our public know. As I said, I get routine requests constantly. I get calls, I get emails. What are you going to be talking about? What did you talk about? And I got to go to my minutes instead of being able to refer them to our website. And it doesn't seem fair to our public, that's all.
I think my impression on this is, obviously if we can get stuff out sooner, then people can be prepared and they can adjust their schedules to attend meetings and things of that nature. So I don't object to the principle of what you're suggesting. I think, for me, I think as a board member, I think I would like to at least be able to see the agenda in the minutes prior to the rest of the public seeing it, just because if there's some sort of change or whatever, I'd like to have that information as being a board member. I mean, I think it's one of the privileges of being a board member. You get to see these things and comment on them and make changes prior to the public, because what I don't want to do is sit here at a board meeting and the public come up and say, well, wait a minute, you guys are supposed to talk about this, but now it's not on the agenda. Or you added something to the agenda that wasn't on the draft, and then we get yelled at for taking something off. I think, because I've been around long enough where I can see that being a problem, but if we can get something out sooner, I mean, I've got no objection trying to get something done sooner.
Okay. It
It
is
out
done in
there.
other school districts. It's fine if you don't have
I think
the
too,
will.
I'm just going to throw this out as a caution. The sooner it goes out, the more things aren't going to be on it. And I can tell you that from my own experience in my own job, creating agendas. A lot of things, when you only meet every 2 or 4 weeks or whatever, you have to get business done that comes in, and you might not be able to wait till the next meeting. So I know for me, if I need to get my agenda out a week or 2 ahead of time, because I have people that like that, there's all kinds of things that come in the day before or 2 days before, and because of the time sensitivity, I may not be able to wait till the next meeting. So I could, as long as there needs to be some kind of disclaimer on there that, listen, there might be 14 other things that get added to that agenda. We're not trying to hide it. My fear is people are actually going to think you're trying to hide it because you put out an agenda that didn't have the stuff on it because you didn't know about it at that time.
It's going to be damned if you do damned.
Right.
Exactly what it is.
Are you suggesting the draft goes out and then gets changed to the regular agenda on a Friday, or?
At the point that it's finalized, whatever the official process is, the secretary weighs in, blah, 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 blah. When that stamp of approval that's going on between them internally, then you pull the word draft off of
So you're
each
saying
page.
the draft will go out Wednesday and then the final will go out?
It doesn't really go out. It's posted on the website, and it just has draft written across every single page. And as you say, there might even be disclaimers on the bottom of these, so that we're not going to take questions on things that were on a draft agenda at a certain brief period of time in the week prior to the meeting or 5 days prior to the meeting. And then at the point that they're approved, the word draft is taken off the documents.
Right. My
And then
concern
people
is
after that
somebody's
are
going to
looking
go
at it
on
know that
Tuesday, the week before, and not see what they're
There's
looking
always
for.
agenda edits the day of the meeting. I mean, up until this very moment, we adjusted them. What was the difference between the ones posted Friday at 4 o'clock and all the changes that, and the one that we discussed tonight? It's always kind of a work in progress. I'm just saying, why not let the public know before the weekend and the busyness that hits the weekend? And
We voted on this
I think
tonight,
the
or-
draft agenda honestly could be the bold points that are right on here.
yeah,
Whatever
you
the
have to be a
board-
lot of detail. I agree.
Well, you're always going to have a superintendent's report. You're always going to have a finance and personnel and programs. I mean, so what goes under that?
That's not
May
fair.
not-
That's not fair.
I'm
They're
just-
going to want to know the topics.
But if you don't necessarily know that, you can't put it on the
But they
agenda.
do
That's all.
necessarily know that
They
by
know.
Wednesdays of every week when they meet. They do. They have a rough idea, probably, I don't know, 90%.
All right, moving on. This is something for everybody to think about. We will vote on this in 2 weeks, and we'll either vote yes or no. Just along those lines, since we tabled Mr. Kurt's property tax agenda item, which he will present in 2 weeks at the end of the month, Mr. Kurtz had done, so everybody knows if you care to come back in 2 weeks, Mr. Kurtz did an analysis of property tax millage rates from sometime in the 1990s to the present for all the school districts in Berks County. And I was going to add to Mr. Kurtz's presentation talking about how property taxes are developed, because I don't know that even the board is familiar with the term, other than the fact that we usually vote on it once a year. Do we raise them or don't we? But we don't really think about what property taxes are and how they impact the different homeowners. So that'll be presented in 2 weeks. But moving on to the next item on the agenda, under new business, a discussion of the daily substitute rate. Mrs. Torshin.
Yes, I would like to bring to the board's attention, as I would like to possibly put on for a voting meeting, to increase our current daily rate for substitutes, which is at $80 a day, and increase that from $80 to $90 a day for the first 19 days, and then move from $90 a day to $100 a day, 20 days and more. The reason that I'm coming to the board for this request is that we are having difficulty competing with our neighboring school districts for substitutes. Recently, the Exeter School District and Boyertown Area School District have increased their daily rate for substitutes to $110 a day at Boyertown and $105 within the Exeter School District. Other neighboring school districts are roughly in the $90 a day area as well. Fleetwood, Governor Mifflin, Muhlenberg is like at 88, Ole 97. They're all over the place, but currently the Danny Boone School District is the lowest. And going to our business office and asking them what the increased cost would be, it would come out to approximately $33,000 per year, obviously based upon the substitute rate. What I'm not seeing is necessarily an increase in absences, but I am seeing that we are having a more difficult time being able to have coverage for those that are out. Where it hurts us the most is at the elementary level. Not to say that the secondary level doesn't get hurt as well, because there are students that are doubled up in classes, or people that are pulled from their prep time to cover classes. So this was one thing that I was looking into. The next thing that I was moving forward with Mr. Hurley, I asked him to begin looking or researching if there's any agencies out there that handle, sub calling, not just calling, but actual placement, to see if there was something that we might be able to do that might be more efficient. But at this point, this is where I'm at with discussion about our sub rates.
Mrs. Torch, can I ask a couple questions on that?
Sure.
So, does that number resets each year, so they go back to their first day?
That's correct.
Okay. And then once we, so typically does a substitute in our district typically wind up working 100 days? Do they go from school to school to keep filling in spots, or I was kind of curious if they have where most of these will fall on that grid.
It varies depending on if we have someone that's out on a leave of absence, then that person is typically replaced by a long-term substitute, which that increases the cost of that coverage, because then we take the starting teacher salary, prorate it per number of days that they're going to be there, and they're paid that rate.
So if someone working over here at Amity Elementary for 5 days, then they're at Brisbane for 4, then they're at the high school.
I would have to say that yes, if we have consistent subs that we are happy with and we want to continue to use, that they would fall into that category, that we would continue to use them, and they would bypass the 19 days.
And that 19, and that's per year. It's not that you work 5, you stop, you're not starting.
Correct.
That's for the whole.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
When does long-term sub kick in usually?
A long-term sub would be anyone that's going to be out for weeks, a couple of weeks, so that we can have consistency. I don't want to say that they automatically go right to that rate. That would be false. They would have to be in that position beyond the 19 days. If we know that they're going to exceed that, or if it's a half a semester or a full year, we'll know right away.
Yeah, I just didn't know if there was like 4 weeks, 6 weeks. I didn't know if you had a trigger point, or if it was kind of a case-by-case basis.
It really is a case-by-case, depending on the number of days that somebody's out or the circumstance to why they'll be out.
When do you expect to get the information on the agency?
I just had to talk to Mr. Hurley and say, could you start to explore, looking to see if there is anything out there. I don't know if you began. We just had that conversation at the end of the week last week.
We've been set up with one of the representatives for next week, and I'm waiting for a message back from another.
Yeah, I mean, my personal opinion is I'd like to hold off on any discussion of this until we have more information about a third-party agency that might be able to provide these types of services to us.
I wanted to start the discussion. I know that it's a problem. I want to make sure that we have consistency in our buildings. I want to make sure that there is class coverage, and just make you aware that we're not really being able to be competitive with two schools that are right next to us, and that we are currently the lowest paying school district in the county. So I will bring that other information back. I'll have Mr. Hurley put something together for me to be able to report back to the board for the voting meeting.
Ms. Bush, I have a question. On average, how many are we having classrooms not covered because of this?
We do have classrooms that there's always. I shouldn't say that there's always. There should be an adult covering every class. At the high school, many times students are rerouted to a study hall opposed to the typical class. So there's twice as many students there, and those students that are being rerouted may not be getting their typical lesson that they should be because they shouldn't be in study hall. That's part of the problem.
How many times does that happen? Any idea?
I would have to say, I don't know off the top of my head. Megan, can you speak up for the high school?
It depends on the time of year. In December, the several weeks, I would say that of a 5-day week in December, 3 of those days probably had at least one teacher without a substitute. I've had as many as 5 or 6 class teachers who did not have substitutes. That's the extreme. Again, it depends on the time of year, because not only like in December do you have staff out, you also have less substitutes because they're busier. You have different things like cold and flu season going around that you have limited numbers. But I've had some very, very large study halls and students who had multiple study halls that day. I try to get in and check on things. And how many of you have had 1 study hall, 2 study halls, 3? We go through the list. There's always somebody who says they've had study hall all day. They feel that way. But it's especially December, that time of year, when Exeter and Boyertown came out with their new numbers. The subs told us in person when they were coming to us, hey, those rates went up, and we're all using the same calling program. So sorry, we'd like to come in, but it's significant. But in general, since we've been back from break, I haven't had any classes until today without coverage, and I was able to shift around. As long as there's enough people, I can normally do that, but it happens fairly regularly.
Melanie, could you speak up for the elementary level? Are you?
Yes, and it's basically the same. December we had a rough month, and it was about 3 in a week. Right now it seems to have stabilized, so we're doing better now.
I know that when I had put out information to the buildings, the secretaries who are responsible for any subs that are not covered through our sub-service, because it'll stop calling for someone approximately an hour, half hour before school, they were telling me that they average at least 1, 2 at the most in a week's time, to where they're struggling to get someone to cover.
1 to 2 classes a week that are not
yes, yes, and that's at the elementary level. So varying reasons, we do have quite a few people that were out for long-term medical. So those people who were consistently, there for us, they're now put into a long-term position. So I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention, and then
So we should just take the whole month of December off and leave it proper.
Or
Yeah, right. Mrs. Torsia.
No, I appreciate you bringing that back.
I have two questions. You're talking about raising from $80 to $90, but that's still less than the two neighboring districts, so how is that going to make us more competitive?
Well, I'm hoping it will make us more competitive than $80 a day. I was trying to be conservative and not completely try to resolve the problem with the substitute rate, but I believe that is part of the problem and making us a little bit more competitive. If you look at, I believe I included some different sheets to you prior to the weekend. On Friday I had sent something out showing you what the rates are around the county, not only in Berks County but in Montgomery as well. And
it's hard to believe that Upper Marion's only 98 and Upper Welland's 80.
I know that one was one that jumped out. Now, I did not collect this data myself. This was shared with me by an administrator in the Boyertown Area School District. This was information that they used.
So what I'm saying about competitiveness, if even if we raise to 90 and you've got districts surrounding us at 100 and 105, are not, isn't the first choice going to be the 100 and 105?
It may be, but then maybe we can compete with some of the other school districts that are at the $90 area, and maybe they live closer to us than they do to Fleetwood or to,
At a certain point, how much is that $5-10 you're going to drive for the wear to make that?
Right. So we may be losing people that are locally but are willing to make the drive.
My second question was, and I hate raising rates for anybody, but we're talking all day here?
Yes. It would be half that.
So $90 for a full day, that's less than $13 an hour we're paying them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, I was trying to be conservative. If you would like to, when we get to that point, look at a higher rate, certainly would entertain that.
I have a question here, too. I was wondering, Mr. Martino, in a conversation, I believe you mentioned that the teacher workday in Daniel Boone is 6.5 hours.
No.
In neighboring, that's incorrect?
It's 7.5 hours.
7.5.
And that includes lunch.
Okay. In neighboring districts, is it 8 hours or is it 7.5? Because that could account also.
I would believe it's 7.5, Connor. I know that there's one school district, Twin Valley, has one long day out of the week and it's by a half hour, but the typical school day is a 7.5 hour day.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Any public comment on any of the items listed under?
I had a couple points under new business. I just wanted to bring up, if that's all right. Just updates. So one of the updates I had was, do we have a facilities use form approved yet?
We were still discussing the policy, but the form, I think,
I know that we were still discussing the policy and the tiers and who falls in what classification, but I think there is a form that you've been using, correct? We haven't made changes to it. I think it's just that they've actually been requiring that everybody uses that form. We haven't made a new one because we're still working on the tiers and who falls into what group.
Okay. Has the administration made any move to get the current form, I guess, in a PDF format online, so that there's, I guess, we had an issue before of the form not going through to the proper people to be signed off on a timely basis and so on and so forth. So I'm curious as to whether that's been...
Yes. It is a PDF form. And the form is moving throughout the district much quicker.
Is it still moving throughout the district under the old process, or is it been so I can go online and fill this form out, and then it gets emailed to the appropriate person? That person fills it out, and then it goes to the next person. I mean,
that was streamlined, wasn't it?
It was streamlined, yes. To one page. I will not sit here and say that it's coming to me electronically at the end of the day. It's coming to me still with everyone's signature saying that this date is okay to use this facility. The building principal then goes on and then goes to the business office to make sure that they take care of it. So that is the way that the form is still being circulated.
Have you guys looked into DocuSign?
I have not looked into DocuSign, and it's something that I can ask Scott to look into.
Yeah, I strongly recommend it. We use DocuSign all the time. You basically, you can set it up so that somebody fills something out, and then it gets emailed to all the different parties that have to sign off on it at the same time. And you can see who has and who has not signed off on the document. And at any point, so if somebody's holding up the signature, you know who it is, and the approval. And it's all done electronically. You just check a box and...
That would streamline it tremendously.
Absolutely.
Can I ask a question? When they fill out a facilities use form, they're also required to have other documents with it.
You can submit additional
Can you
documents,
submit-
or we can put those documents on them for...
Right, payment, there's usually a fee that's charged at that time, and then we don't move the form on until we do have the facilities use fee.
Yeah, so, I mean, you can have a
Right.
box in there that has to be checked. But I'm sure Scott is capable of setting something up where you can take PayPal or a MasterCard or something else online in terms of payment, or if somebody's going to send a check in, then clearly that's going to slow down the process
Right.
for whoever the applicant is. But I just think that if we were getting complaints before about things not getting approved on time, there's certain steps that we can do to streamline this and make it easier for everybody, including you guys, the administration. And at the end of the day, we're just trying to save you time.
I would have to say that with the new business office in place, business manager, assistant business manager, these forms are moving ahead much quicker. But I do think that looking into this would only be beneficial to the school district. Absolutely. I just as soon see it as a document that come across email than me having to worry about looking in that folder that's sitting across the room to sign them. So
one of the things that has made the process faster is we've required, like if they have an insurance form, the check, any kind of flyer, everything comes together. And that's what I was saying about, can you scan other things to the docu? Because now that things are coming all together, it's making the process move faster because we're not waiting on papers.
There's no reason why they couldn't attach a PDF to that if they have it.
yeah, we don't take originals of the insurance documentation as a copy to begin with. So I will have Scott look into it and see how it can fit with us. Absolutely.
Okay. The second question I had is actually for Mr. Small. We had talked about the purchase order system being utilized properly in the Finance Committee several months ago. And I just wanted to sort of get an update from you in front of the whole board as to how that's working out to date.
Good. We've tightened it up.
You can let me elaborate on that a little bit.
We have tightened up the purchase. Oh, sorry about that. If I can make it work. There it goes. We have tightened up the purchase order system. We are utilizing the purchase order system the way the CSIU software program is designed to work. Are we 100%? No. It does control. In other words, if a purchase order is submitted and there is not sufficient funds in that particular account, they can't fund it. Yes, we're making good progress.
Okay. And so the administration is up to speed on how it works and they're using it and it's become part of the... Okay.
It's been wonderful in that we don't have rogue Visa card users. That the past practice was that they would call the business office, ask for the Visa card, make their purchase, and then maybe follow up with a purchase order. That's no longer happening at all, which has tightened up the system tremendously, making it not so convenient for people because they were used to that old way, but making them accountable to make sure that the funds are where they need to be, and if they have any concerns or questions about how to utilize the funds that they think are there, they then have the business office to go to. So I'd have to say that yes.
Okay. I just have a couple other quick things. Mr. Kurtz, I had asked a couple of months ago what if you guys could start working in the policy committee on a conflict of interest policy regarding faculty and outside programs. And that was something that you guys were, I think, start. I'm just not sure if it has been started or has it not.
Hey, Mr. Basil, I'm no longer the policy committee chair. I'll pass your email, though, to Mike Wolf, and maybe he can determine, I guess, where we go with it. I know when I was chair, we didn't really, I think I brought it up in the meeting, but with everything else going on, we didn't get it started. But I'll pass that along to work on in the next few months.
Okay, thank you. The last issue I had was we had discussed here at the board a couple of times about having the board, and maybe this kind of gets to what Mrs. Bites was bringing up a little bit earlier, having an online calendar for the board and all the committees in one central location, which would have all the agendas that are pretty much routine, things that the facilities committee should be discussing at different points of the year, things the finance committee should be evaluating, whether it's leases or it's reviewing our bond issues, or I don't know what it could be, budget process, when we need to start negotiating or thinking about negotiating new contracts. Certain things obviously would be only privy to the board, but there's a lot of routine approvals that we do up here as a board that tend to be, the same approvals every January, the same approvals every February, and so on and so forth. And I think getting those onto an online calendar makes it a little bit easier for everybody. Maybe even the administration, in terms of you don't have to keep going back and pulling last year's files up and reprinting them. And that will at least give the public something they can look at and say, oh, March is coming up. That's typically when the board talks about, whatever these types of things are. So I don't know whether any steps have been taken to implement this or not.
What I would have to, no steps have been taken, but I would have to go back to Scott Matz to help create this calendar, and then for us to go through at least the last year to archive some, significant, routine approvals, things that we know are coming up. But I think that, why we hadn't moved on this, I apologize. That's completely something that I had dropped. But because I know that you had brought this to me before, and I apologize. But I know that Scott hears me loud and clear right now, so we will make sure that we start working on this calendar. And
this actually predates you, Mrs. Torsia. I mean, Mr. Basil, before I was on the board, was talking about this. So
he brought it up to me, though. I will take responsibility.
I just, even if it was, I'm happy to start it. I don't want to do something that's going to be difficult for the board to work around. I mean, the administration work around, but. Google, just open up a Google Calendar, and every committee chairperson could get on there and start building their own calendars, and we all would see it and could edit the things, and it's not that complicated. But and if you had a link, or I don't know how our calendar system works, but it'd have to be able that the committee chairs and board people should be able to load up on the calendar. Independently have access to it, and I know Google, you can do that, but if we've got software here that everybody can access, and from there you could actually build this calendar out so that the different department heads, or band has something coming up, or and now you have one calendar, one place that is populated with all these different things with links on them that you can open up and see what's going on. So the public has one resource to get to. I don't want to have a situation where the public has to go to 4 different calendars to figure out what's going on also.
Well, the only problem would be that the current public calendar that we do have for, obviously, the public is not accessible by anyone except for Scott, correct? Yeah. And I'm quite sure that he would not want to relinquish those rights over that. So we may have to have
Google Calendar that we could populate on our own that sort of sits in the background, and that uploads to our district calendar, and it's just something people see. But at least, you figure it out. You're the IT guy.
Right.
But I like this. I think this would be very important and make life a lot easier for everybody around here.
Well, there are things that are specific to the board, like certain officers get voted separate from the organization meeting. There's times the budget has to be published, So there are specific dates that do come up.
Would the next committee of the whole meeting be an acceptable amount of time for you to be able to have something possibly to present to the board? Is that doable for you?
Oh.
Okay.
Well, I'll bring it up at every board meeting, so it's kind of on my punch list.
Well, I'd like to put it, I would like to have it on agenda, and I'd like him to be able to do a presentation as to how it operates so that anyone that is in the audience can, walk through, see where it's at, see how to follow along with it. So that'll be my first date that I will give you, and then if you need an extension, we can negotiate. Mr. Curtis.
You do it. We'll take everything you missed.
I'd like to jump in here and just say Mr. Basil brought up Google Calendar, and I use Google Calendar. It's fantastic. I also know that Google has a suite of applications that it licenses to different corporations, businesses, small businesses, large businesses, government bodies. I know we use Outlook for our email and for everything. I don't know when that contract runs up, but if I could just throw it out there, maybe considering or looking into Google. I know it's supported by a lot of platforms, and I think it's incredible. So just throwing that out there for Scott and any other board member in the administration to consider.
He's nodding his head. He hears you.
Mr. Matz, you and I discussed SharePoint. Is that the direction that you're going with? Because we talked about committees using it to collaborate on an agenda. Could that be a possible route too?
SharePoint's an internal resource that we use for the public.
And it can
slightly different.
Okay.
So it would just be a matter of determining which one would be best for this application.
If we don't have a presentation by the next committee of the whole, we'll at least have an update to be able to bring to the board on the progress that we're making towards getting this calendar out. How's that? Okay. Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Basil?
That was all I had.
Anything from other board members? Are there any presentations by the public on any issue? Come on, you finally came out to a meeting and you're not going to talk to us. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.